Welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show with, once again, my beautiful co-host, the one, the only, Yolanda M. Smith, the philanthropist.
What's up, Andre? Good to be in the house this afternoon, this morning, wherever.
This Saturday.
Depends on where you're watching from.
Yeah.
Where you watching from? Definitely.
You know, today is a very special show. I've been really doing a lot of this energy, inner body transformation.
Okay.
And today,
you're working on yourself. Is that what you're saying?
I'm working on myself, but let me break it down a different way. I'm working on myself, but because I'm working on myself, I'm able to bring, hopefully, transferable positive energy to someone that may have either positive energy and make them more elevating to the next level, or I can hopefully deprogram the negative energy in that person as well.
Okay.
But this is a lesson. You have to learn this process. It's a process. So I'm not just learning it overnight. This is something just the universe brought to me, and I started embracing it. And I've been seeing the changes in it.
You have?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I need a couple tips. So I'm excited about this show today.
Yes. Since you did bring up the fact of tips and the fact that there is steps and that you have to undergo to get to these different transformation. Without further ado, we have coming on to the show no other than the expert herself. I call her expert because she's a living testimony of transformation from birth to adulthood.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, the one, the only, Tracy L. Clark. What's up, Tracy?
Hi, Tracy.
Hey, so happy to be here with you guys today. We're going to have some fun.
Yeah.
That's what transformation's about. Fun.
So, Tracy, tell the viewers a little bit about Tracy L. Clark.
I always say to you, I said it to you earlier, where do we start? Well, I think you said it really well about how do we transform our lives and where do we go from? And is our life here just to, be born, get a job, pay taxes and die? And I realized we all think that that's not what it is. And when I was born very sick. I had what was called pectus avectum, a closed stomach valve. My hips and legs were not attached and a very damaged nerve system, which they didn't know what to do with me. It was in the 70s, early 70s, 52 today. They didn't know what to do with me. So they strapped me to the bed, put me in a cast and fed me through my head, which if anybody understands energy work or understanding the body, you don't feed a baby through the soft spot, but I had nowhere else for them to feed me. And I was in a very small town called Flin Flon, Manitoba.
Okay.
And so
what state is that in?
It's actually in Canada. So it's in a province.
Oh, okay.
Manitoba. And it's actually, I have a joke now. It's actually was a gold mining town. So I say I was born on a pot of gold. It's got to have some. Yeah. So they thought I was actually going to die. And then a doctor had come in from from a bigger town, realized that obviously the talk of the town was this little kid that's not going to make it. And he realized my stomach valve was shut, which is now they would probably notice it back then, but or like now they would back then they didn't look at it, especially in girls. And it's kind of crazy. We don't have time today, but I have a story as to why that happened. And so from there, it led to this really crazy road as a little person. I walked around like this all the time. Everybody thought I was having seizures. I wanted to rip my head off. Throughout my life until I was 32, 33, I did see about 15 neurologists that told me it was a tick and live with it. And I was like, you don't understand. I'm in so much pain. I was at 3. My mother was in Germany. So I was born in 71. So my mother was in Germany visiting her parents who work for intelligence with the military at the time. And my dad sent her a F you letter, don't come back. I've moved my girlfriend in. I'm keeping the kids. So, of course, she checks on a plane to come back. That was a nightmare. We loaded up our stuff in a garbage bag and we're at midnight on a bus 2.5 hours south to a town where we ended up in a crisis center for women and basically went to welfare housing from there. So that created more trauma and abandonment. And then at 5, I first in that year was a great year. I got hit by a car and
Goodness.
ended up flying on the top of the roof and going down. And later that summer, I was playing in the park with my sister and a friend. And I had said to my mom, she had recently moved in with the man she's married to today. And I said, there was a man in the area that scared me. And of course, you're just a sensitive, sick little kid. Because I lived on a mask to breathe. I had asthma really bad. I was a shaky little kid, obviously had a lot of trauma from what happened with my father. And this guy showed up in the park with a gun and he took us, all three of us, to a dugout of a house and wanted to basically have his way. And so to try to condense
Like
it,
three kids.
three, me, my sister, and another girl. And the other child, luckily, I was 5, my sister was 7. This little girl was 7 as well. And I say the grace of God is that she was the afterthought. So she had 21-year-old biker brothers, and they were biker brothers. So they taught her street smarts. So to kind of bring this down as the hours went by, and he was wanting to have his little way, thinking he was going to start with her, he at least mess with the wrong kid first. So long story short, she did get out. She kicked and screamed and she ran, and she just said, I'm running for help. And my sister tried to get me out of the dugout, but the basement of a house being built, right? And we're small. I'm very small. She couldn't get me out. And she just kept looking at me going, I'm going to go get help too. And I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back. Well, when the first girl ran, he took after her, right, to get her back. That's how my sister tried to climb out the dugout. And when he realized that he had to come back to the house, he was madder than a hornet. And so he just grabbed me by my head and dragged me out of the house. But by this time, the police had been called. It was in the early 70s. And all I remembered was basically my face was in the ground. The gun was on the back of my head and I blacked out. I could hear the cop cars, but that was about it. So once we finally make our way to our home, the whole thing was incident over. We don't talk about it, go to bed, which led to another level of trauma because I would just pile hundreds of stuffies on my bed at night. We were a low middle class family at that point, and I would just cry to sleep. Normally, you'd be like, oh my God, but nobody, the trauma with, parents back then didn't really talk about it. Mom going through her own stuff. So that was basically that coping. I was also that year diagnosed as one of the youngest kids in Canada with an ulcer, as you can imagine, diverticulitis and irritable bowel syndrome. And so my stomach and my whole body was already sick and it was deteriorating. But from then led to many, as you can imagine, destructive behaviors and things, and just trying to find life and raise yourself, which just kept progressing until basically I ended up in a very abusive marriage. And I did get out at 32, but it was a process. And I chose that based on my experiences. He was one of my best teachers, but it was 32. So over 2 decades where I say I had my come to Jesus moment. I was taking care of my children. During that, I had some wins. Like I sold my first company when I was 26 to one of Canada's largest publicly traded companies.
What was that company?
It was actually, believe it or not, you would know this because it was very large, unique video store. Remember when videos were big? It had the playground and we had the media in there and we had all the fun and, all the demographics and everything. And there was a bidding war between Rogers and Blockbuster because of the revenue. They couldn't get it. And so it really catapulted. But then that led to other things like guilt around money, right? Because everyone's like, oh, must be nice to have this. We've worked our asses off. So that's a whole other story. Like, so there was all these challenges that came from health and financial stuff and things that happened and just trying to survive every day. But I literally through that time period, because my allergies were so bad, they tried to give me medicine in the hospital. I totally flatlined. I remember that. I died. I remember it. And I remember waking up too going, I don't want to be here. Like, get rid of me. And through that time,
did you see the light?
I did. I also saw good and bad as a child. Like I was 7 and I saw good and bad. And I had multiple near-death experiences. And my last one was actually, I was about 30. I was going through, it was 07 because I was going through the cancer. And I literally just left and I'm like, I'm out. Like I'm so done. And I was starting to do my spiritual journey at that time. I had already been 5 years in. And it was kind of like my last kick. And I saw, as I moved, I say to people as I went, not only saw the light, I heard music I can't replicate here. And I saw colors I can never see to this day. And all I heard is, you have to go back for your children. You have things to do. A chill's talking about, you have to go back. And I said, no, I'm done. And they're like, you have to go back. And I literally went back up into my system, because my system was still quite weak because I had so much trauma that I was uncovering at this time. I started to understand energy medicine. I was researching, because the doctors had said, there's nothing else. Your body's just failing. I'm 5'10". My body, by the time I got divorced, was like 120 pounds. There was nothing left of me. You could just see my ribs and my butt bone, and it was really gross.
Let's go back for a little bit real quick.
Yeah.
Let's go back to what you talked about growing up,
Yeah.
and what was the relationship that you had with your parents? I mean, this is a lot of stuff to be going through, from the medical side, as being born to being kidnapped. Where was the support cast?
There wasn't. I pretty much raised myself, and that was a trauma. My mom didn't have coping skills. She was a social. It was funny. My mom and my dad were both masters in social work, but they couldn't help their kids.
Isn't that amazing how you can help other people, but sometimes you don't even know how? I mean, that's not uncommon. I mean, when I kind of, yes, it was because you see that often. I mean, you have psychologists that need help. You know what I mean? You have people that work in a field and they can help other people, but often
you got that right.
Can't help yourself.
Right.
That's amazing, though. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And it sounds like to me, given even the trauma that she was experiencing, she was probably just in survival mode. I mean, sometimes our parents just do the best they can given what they know at any given time, right?
Yeah. Well, when I realized that on my journey, she was in survival mode. My dad they were young. They didn't know what to do. They didn't have coping skills. And, and this is part of the journey, right? You don't have that. And literally there is a joke that, look at what I've done. They said, you should have been a drug addict, a sex addict, or, on the street, or an alcoholic. And there was always I have to say, there was always, I realized this later, the divine protection that I had around me, because there was always something where you get close and it would pull you out. And with everything that happened to me, something always came in at the last minute, like the doctor with the stomach, or the kidnapping, like the way that went, like that could have gone even further to a whole other factor. But the fact that one little girl, that little girl raised by the biker boys wasn't there, it would not have ended the way it did.
Yeah.
Like, there was always a divine intervention when I look back.
Tracy, how did you're talking kidnap, you're talking 3 individuals that was kidnapped. Was it, did an alert go out? It
was like early 70s. No cell phones, no alerts. It was in the early 70s.
This is crazy. Like,
what is the time period? You got
nothing. No, she had to run to a house to call the police.
When you was able to escape, I mean, this is serious. When you think you got 3 kids being abducted in broad daylight, and by the grace of that one little girl's assistance got you out. What happened after that? Did you go to the police? You went home? I mean,
no. This is what was crazy back then. So I heard the sirens come. My mom doesn't want to talk about this day, but she did tell me the police, they came. They took him away to an institution. We went home. And the only thing my mom will say to you today about it, she still doesn't want to talk about it. She still can't. She still holds this guilt that, I let my kids go to the park. But went to the park. We rode our bikes all the time, right? She said the cop looked at her and said, if those were my kids, I wouldn't have called the cops, and he wouldn't be alive today. That's all she'll say. She
said what?
The cop, all she'll say is that the cop looked at her when they got there, right? When the cops had us, and then they had to obviously find our parents. And I blacked out during that period. Like that part is what she told me, because I can't even remember that after part, because I'll tell you, it actually opened up more gifts in me where I was seeing dark and good things and bad things.
Right.
But she said the cop looked at her when she got there and said, if these are my children, this guy basically said I would have offed him. And he basically said if these were my kids, he wouldn't be going to
He
the
wouldn't
site.
be here to get to,
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
So I take it that that guy, after
He was
evaluation,
institutionalized.
was already crazy to begin with.
Very. And I could see it in his eyes. I remember he'd be around. I'd say, Mom, there's like, I know you're just being sensitive. You're just a little kid, you know. Yeah.
And so then let's talk about, because I look at you today, you
Mhm.
are a best-selling author, and you're doing remarkable things in the space of healing, you know, as well as your spiritual journey. So let's kind of talk about what was it that really kind of got you to the other side? Because I told you before the show started, for the illnesses that you have said that were there, looking at you today, no one would ever know. You look fantastic. You can tell you're healthy. You can, speaking to you, you can tell, you know, you're healed. I mean, let's talk about that a little bit, so that people can understand the power of energy and emotion.
Yeah. And I get chills when you say that. You know, so when I left my marriage, I was 32 and obviously very sick and it was also at that point where the experts had said, there is nothing else we can do. We don't even know what to do. Like they didn't even talk about diet or exercise, nothing at that point either. Right. And so they said nothing else. And I remember I was in my room and I have these two little kids and I'm financially responsible for them. And I literally was on the floor, like just crying. Like, I'm like, at this point, I don't even know if there's a God out there or if there's anything. I'm like, if there's anything, I always say it's my come to Jesus moment, because I was like, I don't know. There can't be anything.
And you titled your book what? Show them.
Yeah, God, where are you? It's me. And that's why, because I was like, there can't be. And I wasn't able to see at that point the things that were pulled out. And funny enough, it was my sister one day, and I kind of was looking at, reading things like Wayne Dyer, meditating. I'm like, I can't meditate. My head's going like this all the time. And she said to me, wasn't into spiritual, so she could care less. She says, oh, I went to this group last night. There's this woman there. She was really kind of funky. Maybe you'd like to see her. And something in me said, go see her. Well, she ended up becoming my mentor. She saved my life. She's no longer with us today. I credit her 100% for saving my life. And I always said to her, if I hadn't found you, I'd be dead. And she's like, yep. And she taught me a lot of the things about the body and energy work. But then I started to get fascinated about it and understanding. And I ended up co-producing a show with Dr. Bruce Lipton and Dr. Joe Dispenza and Dr. Greg Braden and Dr. Emoto. And then I started to get fascinated on the cellular, what is really going on here way back then, right? And
explain to the people who these doctors are, for the audience that may not know.
Who doesn't know? Yeah. So these are people that actually look at the body on a very holistic approach. And they started on a scientific level. So Dr. Emoto was the famous water scientist, right? Who did all the experiments. If you put love into water, what does it look like on a cellular level? If you put hate into the water, what happens? And so they were all on that same space. And like Dr. Bruce Lipton is who's around today, had, he got kicked out of the university as a famous cellular biologist. They're like, oh, no. He's like, we're looking at the body wrong here. Like, this isn't right. So I started to learn about imprints and energy and how it worked in the body. Well, the more I started to apply it and the more I was looking at all my trauma, my medical team was like, I don't know what you're doing, Trace, but keep doing it. We don't understand this, but it's reversing. And I was hooked. I was so hooked because I was seeing in my own body, like when you walk around like this constantly and people are asking you if you're having seizures and you literally want to rip your head off and you realize it's all the trauma. And when it comes out of your nerve system, I don't walk around like that anymore. I haven't for years.
So what did you get? Can you help the audience to understand specifically, like, what did you do? I mean, what does that look like in terms of?
Yeah. I actually learned how to have a complete awareness of traumas that were coming up into the system. Like what is a trigger? Why does it come into your body? And a lot of stuff, what happened to you when you were younger that you're still doing. So I learned a lot about patterns. What are we doing with patterns? Imprinting, meaning like I had a lot of stuff my mom had, my grandmother had, my great grandmother had. Like, so I was like, okay, so I had to learn energetically. I imprinted it. How do you talk to the body? Like, there's a way to talk to the body. The body hears all your thoughts, all your words, all your emotions, right? So how are you talking to the body? So I learned that. How can you use, like, people don't even realize that if you open your hands and push here, your arms are an extension of your heart. So when we open like this, the energy starts to move through your arms. That's why people like to hug
Like I'm
and
over here
touch,
pressing.
I'm looking at
right?
you.
Yeah, it's like opening it up, right? How do you even, so the central nervous, I started to learn that the central nervous system was a carrier to energy and information. How do you talk to that to remove it out of the body? And you can start signaling. I work a lot with my hands, but I teach people, I said, you can do it your way. There's no right or wrong. And that's the other thing. How are you communicating to them by your body? How is your environment? I started looking at my environment. You said it, or like, is somebody raising you up or are they pulling you down? Are they causing stress, or are like, look at all your environments alone. And you can see, like, if you're going to work and you're stressed out, your body's going to get sick, right? If you have people that are yelling at you, like when people yell at another person versus having a conversation, they don't realize it's like a bullet hole in your field, and that energy goes in and it will trigger everywhere else you've been yelled at, where maybe you didn't have the skills or the ability to process that information.
Tracy,
So
you talked about, not to cut you off, you talked about the
This
light.
is fascinating.
You talked about the light, and me and you talked for like an hour before we even did the show. So we're gonna cover a lot of that stuff too. But you talked about something when Yolanda asked about seeing the light, and you were saying the sounds. Explain to, I don't even know if you're an expert on this part, but I've been studying a little bit about vibrations.
Yes.
And vibration and light. What's your philosophy on that part?
Well, we're living organisms, right? Everything in our body's alive. That's why I'm like, we always are looking outside of us for the answers. And you are correct. As I would say, it's like frequency. You were saying
Frequency, that's it. Yeah.
So every time your frequency raises, here's a simple thing to maybe explain it. Okay. You meet somebody, you're here. You're talking the same language. Maybe you're a people pleaser and they're the reciprocator, like, of that, right? They're taking that space. So you're here. Then you raise your vibration. You have more awareness in your field. You're like, wait a minute, I'm doing all this people pleasing, but nothing's coming back to me. So what happens is your vibration of your body, the more in tune you are with your body, your soul, your spirit, you're the more able to actually calm the mental, come down to the heart, and really connect and know what your body is. Most people don't know what's going on in their body. They're so disconnected. Right. The more that awareness comes in, your frequency will raise. So no different than when you hear sounds, right? They can be at a 300 frequency or they're like a 987. It'll hit the body differently. So as the frequency raises, eventually you're here. Well, now you're fighting with that person. Now you're yelling at that person because you're no longer on the same frequency. So now they're on station 20 and you're on station 40. Like if you look at a radio station, you're not even dialed into the same frequency. When your frequency continues to change through awareness, then your body actually can start to heal and transform itself. So there's a reason in society they keep frequencies low, because when you're low, you're in fear. And when you're in fear, you're in stress. And when you're in stress, the frequency stays lower. So when you start to go into love and acceptance and inclusiveness and kindness, the frequency raises, then the body can transform. You see why the world's set up the way it is.
This way it's more control down here.
Yes.
Because you need a lot of us for the things to be able to manage yourself. Where up here, you can almost be self-sustaining to some degree in a wonderful state. We don't want you in a wonderful state.
Yes.
That's
yeah. And if you're in a
amazing.
wonderful state in the love, then what happens? People are smiling. Like I say to people, if you can just smile at people in a day, you will change their atmosphere. You will change their space just by you smiling. And then you raise their frequency.
Right.
Because I heard something that it's something in the amygdala or somewhere in your brain. I'm not saying it right, probably, but it's almost like that mirroring technique, right? So if I smile at you, you naturally smile back, or you know, look at you so sassy. But I mean, there's something to that. And so I followed a guy, Chris Boss. He does the Never Split the Difference is his book,
Yeah.
but he's a hostage negotiator. And so I was learning some of his tips because I teach some of that stuff, but it was amazing how one of the techniques is that sort of mirroring technique where the energy I give you, you tend to give it back, right? So if I'm coming at you hostile, your natural tendency is to be on defense. But if I come to you in a more loving, accepting way, then you're not as tense and afraid to engage and interact. And a lot of times when you break down those defenses, then you get the answers that you're actually seeking. It's amazing. So I imagine a lot of that plays into the psychology around this as well.
It does. And getting into that heart space, because like exactly like what you just said, depending, like I always say to people, change a perception on something. Like you have one perception, but what could be a different perception? Because if you can come from it from a different angle, because most people, when they're angry, they're afraid. They're afraid of something, right? It's a trigger, it's a fear. And so that again lowers your vibration. War lowers the vibration. You know, if you're having fears around, you know, maybe poverty or illness or something like relationships, the vibration's lower. But when you start to learn to shift it, to raise it, then people go, whoa, things are coming into my life effortlessly. Things are moving differently. And it's a practice. And you know this very well. It's like bodybuilding. It's like muscles. If you don't lift them every day, what happens? You have to train the muscle.
Yeah.
Now, Tracy, we was talking about a part of your life with your dad and the Yoda thing. Tell the viewers about that. I thought that was like really unique because we shared this. I'll let you tell, then I give my spin on it.
Yeah. For people who have read the book, they always laugh. Yoda's my hero in the book. My God, is my hero. And they said, why? And it's when I was a little kid, my dad took me to see Star Wars. And I was sitting there. I remember the scene where Yoda's lifting up Luke's plane out of the swamp. For anybody who knows Star Wars, he lifts a plane and he's telling him, you know, you just do, there's no try. And I remember watching this little character who's based on a real life character, right? But as a child, I walked out and I said, oh, we all have those magic powers in us. Like we are all like little Jedis, right? I know how you're just a kid. But that moment, and I always say this to everyone, even when I'm out there speaking or when I used to be able to travel more, I'm getting back now because of where we were locked down. But I'm telling you, I would say you're all Jedis. We all have these superpowers that there's a group of people who didn't want you to know you had them. And so I always held on to Yoda. And when I look back in my life, I'm like, that little character gave me hope to keep going, that we are all Jedis and we all have a light in us that we have not even begun to tap.
It was so funny because remember, Tracy, I was telling you, I was like, the universe, which I'm noticing, I kind of been noticing, it's always been here. And you do have the people that suppress that knowledge from you, but they do give it to you. And they gave it to you through the way that they give it to you really is through movies. And people don't realize it. They're telling you, okay, this is here, but you got to learn how to unlock it. You know, it's here, but you got to kind of figure out how to unlock it. I see that you did that. Tell me, since you started doing the energy, let's go back for a minute because there was something else that me and you talked about.
Yeah.
What's the difference between what you do and is it Reiki healing?
Yeah, there's a lot of different, I call them like there's different modalities and different ways. I spend most of my time teaching people tools. I call them tools. So I'm known as a tool lady that you can use to learn how to navigate your energy your way. So I'm like, here's a tool that you can take. Like when I'm like, like the energy, not taking that in. Like I'm just not taking that in. Walking down the street, you see, I'm not taking that in. Like that's a good one, right? You're signaling to the body. So the difference is I teach people to be empowered. I do not believe in masters or gurus. I think you're the master and guru of your own space, your own domain, and that your connection to the God of your understanding is sacred to you. So what's different is to say that's your journey, your connection. And so I teach the tools to say, look, these are things that I've learned that I use every day, whether it's a clearing or an activation through their words and through how to move energy. It's similar to, in the Marvel movies and stuff where they have the computer screen up there and they're moving it like this.
Yeah, Tony.
That's how you move energy. People don't realize this. And that's why they do that in those movies, right? They're showing you how they're sliding things on a computer. Mm-hmm. Well, our heart drive is our hard drive on our computer. It's our heart drive. And we can move everything in our body the same way. So when you say movies are teaching, they are. And I say it's the exact same way. When you look at a lot of the other modalities tend to kind of go, okay, you got to do it this way. And then a lot of them get very twisted. How they get twisted. And it's sort of like you have to do it this way. So you start giving your power outside. And if you don't do it the right way, then it's not going to work. There's no right or wrong way. It's your way. Your way is the right way. And you just use a combination of information and start applying it. And people always say, oh my God, that worked. Wow, that worked. Like I didn't sit in traffic. I wasn't mad, or my body's healing. Like I've seen so many miracles. And that's the big difference, is that it's about you learning how to connect with your body and move the tools the way that work for you.
And isn't it possible? There's different types of energy too that people need to realize, but you can also bring that negative energy in, and it can stay in you as well.
100%. And we all have, like, you don't think I had to get rid of all that negative energy? Like I would kind of go out and still be, oh, hello, but we all have that within us because we have different things that have happened in trauma, and we're not to beat ourselves up. We're to look at it and realize that we are beautiful, whole people, that as we move these pieces out, we become a stronger unit within. And then when people start to realize that, they're like, yeah, so different levels of negative energy, right up to, there's negative energy right up to possession. Possession's pretty rare, but it does happen. Yeah.
Tell me about the possession that we talked about that happened to, can I use the word demonic energy?
Yeah, that one was. Yeah.
Explain to viewers about that particular incident, because once again, television and movies tell you what's really going on in the universe.
But then they tell you it's fiction though. And it's not.
Wow.
This is not real.
Hey, there's a movie that came out recently. I'll say it here. It's called Nefarious. If people have not seen it, you want to understand how demonic energies get in. It's just a dialogue. It's not scary, not horror-y. That's one I say to people. Recently, I've said to my community, watch Nefarious, and they understand. But the incident you're referring to is it was crazy, because I understand how these dark energies get into the body and go up to possession and what they can do to a body. And a lot of times people don't realize when they encounter certain people, they're not talking to the person. They're actually talking to that demonic energy that's in them. So in this particular class, it was a very large class. I was teaching, and this woman came in, and we have all these witnesses to this day that people just go, I don't know what happened there, that I don't want to see that again. Anyways, just like the movies, as soon as she got in and I started teaching and moving energy, and we were talking about dissolving the old religious paradigms, and we were talking about the body and the repair. So it was a whole day class. That whole day, she screamed and yelled, just like you'd see in the movie, flopping around on the floor. Like I had to have my assistants hold her down and move her in the back, because you're disturbing these, there's 100 people there and she's disturbing them. But they're like, and they're like, why is she not bothering you? And I said, don't pay attention. Don't give that thing any attention. And I had already understood at this time how to do. I don't do them. Don't call me. Don't ask me to do an exorcism. Do not ask me. If it shows up, then I'm like, God wants me to do it. So, and I've removed a lot of entities off people. Anyways, the end of the class, I had a core group of people. I said, can you stay here? I said, we removed everyone of the day. This was her all day. She was sick. She had a damp tongue. She had other things that were going on. And I literally, at the end of the day, I did what I knew to do and what Spirit told me to do. And she kind of came out like this. It's just like you see in the movies. I know people say it's crazy. Crap comes out of them and they go completely calm. She's like, what's happened all day? Like, what's happened to me? And I said, well, you should be okay now. She was so calm when this person was flopping everywhere on the floor. Like, not.
She didn't have any recollection of what had happened to her.
She kind of did, but she was like, I couldn't control this thing. And she called me a couple days later because she had these illnesses, and she'd gone back to her Chinese doctor. He said, your tongue's not damp anymore and your illnesses are gone. What happened to you on the weekend?
Why is there such a demand now? Or let me rephrase
Crazy,
it.
right?
Yeah.
Crazy. If I had not had witnesses, I tell you, people are like, that's crazy. And I've never done one of those since, but because most people don't carry them that heavy in their body.
Why is there such a evolution now with transferable, non-transferable energy, wrecking, healing,
Yeah.
the whole nine yards?
It's
Why?
really
Why
taken on
now?
popularity.
Yeah, why now? And how do we know? Because me and you
Yeah.
talked about this. Because I had somebody that reached out to me about coming on to the show, and when I looked at their stuff, we talked about this. It was more seductive versus healing. Explain. I know you're not. I know you don't know the answers to everything, but if I want to better myself and to keep that positive energy, what should I look for? Because clearly that was a red flag for me. I was uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
It didn't. I asked questions, and their questions were not the.
That's your red flag right there. If
Right,
you're not comfortable. So when that energy came up to me years ago, I was always like, it doesn't feel right. Follow that first. I always say follow. Maybe down the road is for you, but one, follow that. Two, because there's a lot of, and I've seen it all. I could tell you guys, so I won't say here because this is, we don't know whose ears are listening, but the things I've heard people do to, I'm going to this heal. I'm like, that is not appropriate. That's like porn. We don't go there. So it should be stuff where you feel empowered, where you're learning, like, how can you apply to yourself and what can you take out in your everyday world? And I'm very big on this because I know how dark energies transfer through pharmaceutical, recreational drugs, alcohol, all this stuff. I understand how they use these things to transfer. Lower energies, fear, everything after obviously a couple decades. So I say to people, it's very controversial in this space. You do not need to put something in your body to heal and transform in terms of a hallucinogenic. And I say that some people love it and they do it, but you also have to understand the ramifications, and people don't understand in actual real shamanic times, the shaman takes the medicine. You don't do it. You don't touch it. You come to the awareness. So things that say you have to do it this way, run away. Like literally, that's one of my rules. If everyone says you have to do it this way, it always should be, you can take this and mold it and shift it. And also if there's because there's a lot of this in this realm of beating up and, I'm better than this. I think it's in every space, right? And I said, you want to run away from that. I said, everybody is equal. Nobody's on a pedestal. Nobody should be worshiped. No, do not give your energy. So if there's anything like you have to do this, and when they say have to, you're giving your energy away. So it should be, here's some things we can work together. We're inclusive. We're all equal. We're just learning and moving through life together. And some people just have a different skill set or knowledge, but you can take that and learn. And that's the one thing, because a lot of these, you and I were talking earlier, there's some modalities where I'm like, well, they teach politicians that modality. And they're like, people go, what? And I said, so what do politicians do? They lie, cheat, and steal, and they have their own little agenda, which is not for the people. I don't want to touch something that they're teaching politicians to, because it's already corrupted.
And
people will argue
of how to get you to do what they want you to do. I mean, I've been in some spaces where I'm seeing that at play, and there's a lot of that going on where they're using techniques, and these techniques actually kind of pull you in to what they want you to believe in. And then all of a sudden they get you to thinking you belong and you're stuck and you need to stay here. And for whatever reason that may be, whether it's financial or control, mind control, or whatever. So that's kind of interesting. So do you teach, I want to just tell the people how they could get in touch with you, or do you teach this? I know you speak on a circuit. Just give us a little, how are you using, these gifts today?
Yeah, I actually do a lot of teaching, mostly online right now. That kind of more switched with COVID, and I'm now starting to allow, I've been getting out a lot more now. People don't realize how locked down we were up here.
Yeah,
They're
we
like,
were like
whoa.
that. And a lot of this came out of that, recognizing that the mental wellness and physical wellness of a lot of people suffered greatly during the pandemic. And, you know, and so that I think that's why too, there's this elevation now, and you're seeing so much more of this, or people realize that people are in trouble, and some are serious and others are capitalizing, right?
Yeah. And the other thing is too, a lot more, we are elevating as a society. We're waking up and we're going, wait a minute, why have I given my power away to these authoritative bodies and I want to take it back? So they're looking for, and also because these systems are eroding, people are now looking for, wait a minute, I have to be responsible for my health,
Oh,
my
that's
mental
good.
health,
That's
my
good.
wellness.
Yeah, the awareness. I love it.
Yeah.
You hit on it. Yeah, you hit it.
Yeah.
The awareness and the prioritization of people's lives that made us rethink, why are we giving all this time and energy to this job and neglecting ourselves, neglecting our families? Yeah, there's a lot. You're right. A
It's
heightened
huge.
awareness.
And now
shift,
people
right?
are saying, I don't want to live like that. And they're starting, they don't know what it is. It's kind of awakening of, okay, it's like the awakening, elevating process isn't just realizing that there's a whole bunch of institutions that weren't there for your well-being. It's realizing, wait a minute, what can I do to change me? Stop worrying about all this. Change me inside. What are the things I can do to be a better human, to be kind, to change my life? And a lot of people say that's selfish. I said, no, it's not, because the more you change and elevate, the more you're able to help others change and elevate.
That's
no matter
exactly
who
what I
you
just
are.
said. Yeah. Hey, Tracy, let me ask a question.
Powerful. Watch it.
What is one of the biggest change that you see happening? Let me rephrase it. What's one of the biggest challenges that individuals that come to you want to work on when it comes to transformation? Then the second part of that question is, what is the number one thing that you would recommend people first to do without giving out the whole secret, as far as really recognizing how to transform and when they should start going into some type of transformation about themselves?
Yeah. Well, I'd say I see people of all walks of life. Usually most people, they'll show up, they have a physical issue that has hit them. So they're really reevaluating. That's kind of where they are. Or it can be, basically, there's nothing I haven't heard or seen, but a lot of times it's physical. They're like, oh my gosh. And unfortunately, I think the sad part about that is we need to start as a collective being proactive. So we're not, like, I was born sick, but so that's a different situation. But most people wait till they get sick before they take their life and transformation serious. And that's a harder road to come back from. It really is. And it's a longer process. And this is what I say to people is baby steps go into big steps. You didn't get this today. It's not good. Some will go away tomorrow, depending on where your energy and your cycle is. Some, it's a little bit of a transformation, because I'll give you an example. I had a woman that came to an event and she was a heavy smoker. At the end of the weekend, she hadn't smoked all weekend, not one bit. She goes, oh my God, this is a miracle. I have no cravings. It's gone. And I said, yeah, but here's your next step. You're going to go back home into that environment with the people in that house that are creating you to want to smoke. So now you got to go home and you have to change. You have to make changes. You can't go back to the old patterns or you're going to smoke again. What? And so she went back. 3 weeks later, she started smoking again.
Yeah.
And I said, do you want to? She goes, well, so it didn't work. I said, no, it did work. Did you change anything in your environment? Well, I can't because of my husband this and my kids are this, and everyone's got an excuse.
Yeah.
And I say, you have to, this is one thing I learned, and I had to remind myself this every day. Tracy, if you don't make yourself a priority at all costs, nobody else is. At all costs, meaning I got to leave the marriage. He's not going to like it, but I got to leave all costs. You know what? When I went through some of this stuff, but we know a lot of things linked to cancer, 100% of it is sugar. And we know doctors are saying that now, but the medical system doesn't want to say it. And I'm like, okay, so when I went through, it was at all costs. Did I want to give up some of the sugar? No. But I'm like, okay, all costs. That's what I say to myself. What am I willing to do for me?
So you're saying it is the sugar as it relates to cancer. And they said that's a myth.
Oh, you should see some of the doctors that have been coming out. And that was all back in 2007. because I was working with not only my practitioners, but also Chinese doctors. And that's where that came from. And now look at how much sugar they crammed into all of our food.
Oh my God.
And
We just
And-
had somebody on the podcast, the two doctors that talked about that.
And you know what? Somebody told me the other day, this is amazing. What was it? Sugar and tobacco farmers still get federal subsidies from the government.
yes,
I
I'm
was
chilled head to
floored.
toe. Yes.
Two
When I get
things
chills.
that
Yeah.
are so dangerous for us.
Uh-huh.
But you
I
go
would
to
say-
other countries and you
Yes.
and you can't put genetically modified anything into the food, no antibiotics, no pesticides. And when we go to other countries, I visit other countries, I'm like, ooh, the food tastes so fun. We're so conditioned to have this
Yeah.
garbage in us.
Welcome to
Oh.
America.
Oh my
Right.
God.
But we are in all of North America. It's here too. And now doctors are saying it, but they're kind of censored. You can find them. You can find really good medical experts that will
Oh
say
my God, but
it's the sugar.
they shut them up.
But this is
They
something else
do.
that people that you haven't shared yet. Tracy, you grew up on a native reservation.
I did. Yeah, I
What
did.
was that like?
Because my dad, ironically, was the head of the correctional facilities, the jails up north. And so we lived on a native reserve, and it was called La Ronge, just a small town in northern Saskatchewan, one of the last towns. I learned a lot. There's a beauty of the culture. I also learned how the institutions lie about what's really going on in the reserves and how they help them, don't help them. They spin this narrative because they lived on it, right? Beautiful culture in so many ways. I also learned why they up here, we know the whole thing around the alcohol. They have an addiction to alcohol. Why? Because they have great healing powers and abilities. It was very eye-opening and very beautiful and very sad at the same time, because there was a lot of destruction of different tribes up here. And then there was a lot that actually flourished. So, and I think that's throughout North America, but beautiful culture. It was interesting. I love the drums to this day. They're just so moving. And, but it's sad to see how a political institution speaks one space, but destroys their culture. So it was really, as in the 70s and 80s growing up there. Yeah. So after we got kicked out of our house, though, we only went back for different periods, right? Because he lived up there for some time. So there was a kind of a pull. But yeah, and it was also very interesting because we had, obviously, our little friends up there were native, and we would go through, well, we're not allowed now. Our native friends got ostracized for talking to the white kids. Like, it was a very interesting dynamic. I saw one of my good friends, like, her mom was native, married one of the white gentlemen up there, and they were ostracized from their tribe, like, so to speak. So this has been going on forever, we know, but it was like this, it was interesting as a kid. And I kept sitting there going, why can't we be friends? I don't understand. Like, it was really hard too as a child, because I experienced that where I'm like, well, but you're my friend. Like, why can't we just be friends? Like,
that's a whole nother show.
It is, right? But growing up in it as a child and seeing their culture, and you just want to be friends. We don't care. We just want to be friends, right?
Because it's a learned behavior. It's totally a learned behavior from that standpoint.
100%.
Share your book with the audience so that how they can get a copy of your book.
Yeah, it's God, Where Are You? It's Me, and it's on Amazon. So that's where we find it, on Amazon.
God, Where Are You? It's Me. And how
God, Where Are You? It's
the
Me.
audience get in touch with you?
TracyLClark.com is my website, and it's getting a revamp right now, and everything's usually there, my link tree, and like I said, the website's getting revamped, but we all have social media, so the link tree is there. And I do say, although I talk a lot about energy, but I also talk about world events going on, and people sometimes get confused because they say you have to understand what's going on a world level to understand how you need to shift your energy as well to stay in peace and harmony and kindness.
Before we wrap up, I'm going to bring one more thing to the table that we talked about. I thought was very interesting. We talked about the energy. We've been talking about positive energy. But one thing that I told you that I learned after researching this, the one energy that keeps coming back on the negative part is the word karma. Yeah. Give me your spin on that, because my spin, then I'll tell you what my spin was.
Yeah, well, karma goes back to, what goes around comes around. I always say a lot of us that are very aware right now of what's going on in the planet. We were some of the nasty ones way back when that started some of this horrible stuff we're going through. So we've come back to set it right. But yeah, we meet people and we do have karma with them. And we have to understand that our goal isn't to really beat them up and be mean. Our goal should be to, what did I learn about this? What did I learn about myself? Am I growing? And can I love them enough now to let them go? If they choose to stay there, like my ex-husband is in a worse position, 20 some years later than when I left. I don't sit there and judge him. He chose to stay there and I chose to elevate. So what will happen in this Earth school, what I have seen and experienced, not like school now where you get everybody passes. Earth school doesn't work that way. If you work through your karma here and you work through your lessons, when you go, you will get a pass or fail. So someone that doesn't want to change and elevate, you're coming back and doing it all over again. And maybe worse.
Yeah.
Maybe
worse. Yeah.
Maybe worse.
Worse.
Maybe worse. Yeah. But if you pass and you've been worked through, all of us have been working through stuff, we will pass. But we might come back at a different timeline where things are in a better space or whatever. But we won't meet these people. We will meet a different soul group because these people have come back to have to learn what they didn't learn when we were with them. And we'll come back with the people that elevated.
That's powerful.
It's like so deep.
So you're going to learn today. If not, guess what?
That's why we're going to end it with that, because people didn't understand. Hey, karma is a bitch, depending on how you use it. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been no other than Tracy L. Clark on the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Subscribe, like, share,
comment,
reach out to her. Let's try to change the universe one day at a time. And make sure you reach out to Tracy L. Clark.
TracyLClark.com.
This has been
Get her book.
Another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast
Crayton Show.